everyone. I'm Major Garrett. Welcome to a special edition of America Decides from the final night of the Republican National Convention right here in downtown Milwaukee. Fiserv Forum is the arena. As you well know, former President Trump will formally accept the Republican Party's nomination here tonight. That is historic. We should remember this. It's never happened in the history of the Republican Party. The same person accepting the nomination 3 consecutive presidential cycles. Former President Trump will make that Republican Party history tonight. He's also going to, of course, deliver a speech. And that speech is expected to have a different tone and different sense of reflection following the attempted assassination attempt on former President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania, Saturday evening. Republicans, I can tell you, here in Milwaukee, they're reveling in the possibilities in this election get put together by former President Trump at the top, and Ohio Republican Senator 39-year-old J.D. Vance, presidential nominee. President Biden, stark contrast. Forced to cancel campaign events as he deals with a diagnosis of COVID, which is now 1 day old. Oh, and on top of that, a divide that is spilling out in full public view within the Democratic Party about the future of Biden's re-election campaign, whether it should continue. Also, more bad news for Biden and Harris. CBS News polling that shows for the first time President Trump with a 5 percentage point lead nationally over President Biden and Kamala Harris. I want to start our coverage this evening with our Caitlin Huey-Burns, who is on the podium position overlooking the big stage here in Milwaukee. Caitlin, take it away.
Great to be with you on this final night in Milwaukee, Major. I am at that podium position, which means that I am going to be standing just to the right of Donald Trump when he comes here to officially accept his party's nomination. And I can tell you, for a party that has been struggling for the past 8 years to kind of figure out its identity, it has fully come to terms with the idea that this is Donald Trump's party. Donald Trump is coming here tonight not only to accept the nomination for the 3rd time, as you mentioned, making history, but he's coming here as a survivor of an assassination attempt just a few days ago. And when you talk to Republicans here, they almost can't believe how this is all coming together. And they keep referencing that photo that we saw emerge from Butler, Pennsylvania, of the former president standing back up. That has been a theme here, a theme to try to unite the party and also appeal to those voters who have been resistant to perhaps come along with them. And delegates here tonight also believe this is the starkest contrast yet to President Biden, who, as you mentioned, is sidelined on the campaign because of COVID.
And Caitlin, what do you have in terms of expectations for Trump's speech this evening with about a minute to go?
Well, we know that he has rewritten the speech from what he originally intended, and his family members have been telling us and telling CBS News that he has been changed by the events that happened on Saturday evening. So that should be reflected in his remarks tonight. Every time that Trump has entered this arena, the crowd has been rapt, of course, but he has yet to speak in front of them. So they are eager to see what he has to say, and they were eager to have him give them assurances that this is a campaign moving forward.
Caitlin Huey-Burns from the podium position as the house band here, 6 Wire, continues to turn out the hits. Want to go to the White House, North Lawn of the White House, and catch up with our Ouija Jang, a much quieter, more possibly somber locale as the Biden White House and the re-election campaign contemplate its future. Ouija, catch us up not only on the diagnosis of COVID, but the future of the campaign.
Well, Major, it's quiet in the public sense, but privately, the campaign and the White House are scrambling to push back against multiple reports now that President Biden is either open to the idea of resigning or that he is cuddling with his team and getting closer to making that decision. And so the split screen, to me, Major, is what is so notable. Here, on the one hand, you have the Republican Party unifying behind Donald Trump in a way that we have not seen. You even have Nikki Haley coming out, speaking on the main stage. The second half of that screen is prominent Democrats, including leadership on Capitol Hill, calling for their presumptive Democratic nominee to leave the race. So I only imagine what will happen when the RNC wraps and, it is more space for these calls to happen. But I think it's really important, as you continue to stress, as we should, every time we talk about this, that this decision is the president's alone to make. And even though he is sidelined with COVID, in a new interview out today, he said that he is staying in the race, and he insisted that his age is an asset. So he is recovering, as you mentioned, in Rehoboth Beach at his beach house with mild symptoms of COVID, and continuing his role as president of the United States, certainly not candidate, because he isn't anywhere except by himself in Rehoboth.
Weijia Jiang at the White House, thank you so very much. I want to turn back to the convention and the convention floor, where we find our Ed O'Keefe. Ed.
Major, welcome back for the fourth night. It is the finale of this convention, which means the flair has gotten a bit better. You have things like this lovely headdress here, but the one I've been waiting for, and it's finally materialized. Stay with me here. We are in Wisconsin, right? So they brought their cheese heads with them tonight. There's a big anticipation for this speech from the former president, who they'd like to make the future president again. We expect to see most, if not all, of his family tonight, right? And I'm curious to see sort of the reaction to what the Trump team tells us is going to be a more emotional, sort of unifying message from the former president, and how that resonates here in a hall that's full of veteran convention goers, people who've been coming since the 90s, in some cases the late 1970s, but also those newer MAGA-rooted activists who've become big, devoted parts of this campaign and of this movement. I want to point out one other thing. Some of the best seats in the House this week have been with our friends from Nebraska. And you might ask yourself, why on earth would Nebraska get such good seats? Well, remember, there are some electoral college calculations that include exploiting the quirk in Cornhusker state law that gives out electoral seats, or electoral college, by congressional districts. And the Omaha area district is one that both campaigns realize they may need to get to 270 in the end. So the Republicans, at least, are rewarding them with a pretty good seat in hopes that they'll go back home, work the crowds, and make sure that that congressional district stays red. Major, we'll be down here all night. No bathroom breaks tonight for us, because if we leave, we're going to lose our spot on the floor, as it's going to fill up throughout the night for Trump's big speech.
Two very important notes. We do not want Ed O'Keefe to lose his convention floor spot, and we want always to rely on him for things like the Cornhusker quirk. Ed O'Keefe, thank you so very much. Coming up, what we're expecting to hear. It's a big speech. Everyone's got expectations from former President Trump, because that speech could very well shape the rest of the 2024 campaign. That's next. You're streaming America Decides.
A Republican House and President Donald Trump will preserve the historic Trump tax cuts and eliminate taxes on tips. Together, a Republican House and President Donald Trump will fund the police. We will rebuild our military. We will stand up to communist China. And ladies and gentlemen, we will finish the wall.
I am with you. I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again.
You may remember that moment. Donald Trump, 8 years ago, Cleveland, Republican National Convention. Remember, the last time Republicans had a national convention, 8 years ago. Well, tonight, former President Trump will accept officially his party's nomination for a third consecutive time. I want to bring in Finn Gomez, who is our CBS News political director, for analysis. Finn, your assessment of what we should look for tonight from former President Trump.
There's a couple of things, Major, that we are expected to hear tonight from former President Trump from that podium, and one is going to be unity, an emphasis on unity. In part to draw the contrast, the sharp contrast between this party and the disarray and chaos of the other party, senior advisors have told me.
And when they say unity, do they mean Republican unity?
Republican unity, that's right, party unity. And that right now, when you look at that contrast, is something they're looking to emphasize. Also, bio. We've been hearing we heard from his his granddaughter last night. We heard from his son. It's an attempt to humanize former President Trump, attempt to show him as a grandpa, to show his personal side. We're going to hear more of that. It's going to be more presidential than we've heard former President Trump in a while, I've been told. And we may not even hear the name Joe Biden in his speech, I've also been told.
So to reach back to a phrase from another era, a kinder, gentler former President Trump?
Yes, that is the expectation. I've been talking to senior advisors all day, and that's what they're telling me. Look, the other thing that I wanted to emphasize is that there's a sense of jubilation, frankly. They feel like a sense of confidence where they are with 3 months out before the November 5th election. They see story headline after headline of the president potentially stepping down, and that for them.
And quickly, real quick on that, Finn, any thoughts they have about what the campaign changes, if at all, if there is no longer a President Biden at the top of the Democratic ticket?
Well, there is an expectation if that does happen, and that Vice President Harris would step in, right? We don't know that. It's very early. We don't even know if the president's going to step down.
Exactly.
But if that does happen, they are prepared. You've heard her name probably as much as you've heard Joe Biden in the past couple of days, because there is expectation that she can go to the top of the ticket.
Finn Gomez, thank you very, very much.
Absolutely.
I want to turn now to our Robert Costa, who joins us. And Robert, I understand you have some new reporting to convey about this running conversation among Democrats spilling out into full public view about whether President Biden should continue to sit at the top of the Democratic ticket and go into Chicago as the presumptive nominee, specifically related to former President Obama. What can you tell us?
Major, good to be with you. I've been speaking to confidants of both President Biden and former President Obama over the last 24 hours, and it's evident just now in the last hour that the pressure is mounting on President Biden as he recovers from COVID in Rehoboth over the weekend. The biggest thing I'm hearing behind the scenes from some of the top players in the party is that the money could dry up for the Biden campaign, that they're getting signals from donors, from lawmakers, and others that if he doesn't get out of this race, he might not have the money he needs to power out of that convention in Chicago in August. He might not have the money he needs to be on the airwaves in the fall. Now, these are warnings. These are what-if scenarios, but this is being presented to Biden's inner circle, who remain, it should be noted, dug in and defiant and very frustrated with all of this talk about getting the president out.
Robert, we have new CBS polling data, which I'm sure you've seen. We've all seen it. It's internal to us first, then we share it with the nation. President Trump, 52%. Former President Trump, 52%. Joe Biden, 47% nationally. Also, Trump with a lead in all the key battleground states. That has got to arrive as not only bad news to Democrats, but consistent with other internal polls that they've been sifting through.
They're looking at bad polls across the board, whether it's CBS News or internal polls. And it's not the polling, though, that's so interesting to me, Major, as a reporter, that's driving the discussion. It's money, money, money. And the Obama inner circle, which has a somewhat tense relationship at times with the Biden inner circle, is saying, look, we're trying to help, but this is the reality when it comes to financing. You can not believe the polls, that's one thing, but money's a tangible thing in American politics. And if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to compete. So it's really the money factor this weekend that's weighing on the shoulders of that Biden team.
And, Robert, let's talk about the money for a moment, because right before the debate, there were polls, ours and others, showing that tenaciously President Biden had sort of closed the gap with President Trump within 1 or 2% nationally, percentage points, 1 or 2% or slightly ahead in some of the battlegrounds, after spending $100 million, maybe slightly more than that, on campaign advertising. It took all of those resources just to bring it within the margin of error and basically a tie. If you don't have those resources going forward, it's very hard to wage a campaign, if I heard you correctly.
It could very well be, but what's interesting as well at this moment, and it's a fluid moment to say the least, is that President Biden's telling his team, I don't care what all these naysayers are telling you about the polls, about money. I'm the president of the United States. I'm not going to be pushed out because I had a bad debate. And he's being treated in a gentle way by Speaker Pelosi, the former speaker, Leader Schumer in the Senate, and so many other colleagues who are having these conversations with him, trying to be frank about how they see the political reality. But this is someone who's saying, I've been counted out before. Give me a chance. Let's see how it goes. But a lot of Democrats just don't want to wait to see how it goes. I've never seen the Democratic Party, which I've covered for over 15, 16 years, so nervous, skittish at the upper ranks.
Always available with new reporting. Robert Costa, thank you very, very much. Coming up, I will speak with a senior advisor with the Trump campaign on how Republicans plan to motivate delegates here and maybe the country writ large with the Trump-Vance ticket, especially in those battleground states. That's next. You are streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides from night 4 of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. As Weijia Jiang told us a few moments ago, coronavirus diagnosis for President Biden has taken him off the campaign trail. He didn't need any other setbacks, but this is yet another one as the president and all of our campaigners around him, meaning his inner circle, contend with mounting public pressure to drop out of the race. Kadia Goba is here with me now to try to sort this out if possible. Kadia, politics reporter for Semaphore. Kadia, we're all chasing leads and rumors and angles. What are you hearing?
That the pressure campaign is not giving up at this point. We saw a couple of hours ago, Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland, a letter just magically appeared that he had apparently sent to the president 2 weeks ago. I think it is very strategic. We're at the point where there is a strategy to actually put these things out, to leak this information, to kind of show people, like, it's okay to come out if you want. People, by people, I mean members of Congress. And I don't think that's letting up. From what I understand, the members I talked to today are already looking ahead at, seeing who's going to replace him.
Assuming that this is going to end with, at some point in the not-too-distant future, the President of the United States announcing he's withdrawing from consideration as the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party.
That's correct.
Does it strike you as significant, Kadia, that Jamie Raskin now joins Adam Schiff, two very prominent Democrats on the House Select Committee investigating January 6th, when the Biden campaign has said this is an existential election for the future of American democracy, and two members of the committee most involved in investigating the underlying causes of the Capitol riot are saying, you're not the messenger to carry that message?
That's a great point. I was talking about, I was wanting to talk to members a week and a half ago about, people with military backgrounds, intel backgrounds, to see if they had an issue with him, or to see if they thought that he posed a threat at all. And mums was the word. They wouldn't talk about it. So I do think it is particularly interesting that these people that are so aligned with the administration, number one, are coming out, but also people who, as you point out, are talking about protecting democracy. Republicans are already at this stage where they're saying, well, how can you say you want to protect democracy when you want to change the election at the last minute, or have someone who probably doesn't, or who they see is not fit for the position?
And really quickly, Kadia, do you think there is a predictable timeline on this to hear one way or the other?
I haven't heard anything from when the Republican conference gaggles out to right before to the next convention, the Democratic convention, because as we heard today, Adam Smith said he supports Kamala Harris, but he would like the delegates to actually vote her in. So we'll see. Timeline,
1 day or 3.5 weeks. Kadia Goba, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it very much. Coming up, well, it's a big question here. What do we expect to hear from former President Trump tonight? We've had some analysis previewing that. Next, I'll speak with a senior advisor to the Trump campaign who might be able to shine even more light on that question. That's coming up next right here on America Decides.
the corporate spin, the carefully crafted lies, and the media myths. The Democrats are holding their convention next week. Go there. The Republican Party, the party of Abraham Lincoln, goes forward united, determined, and ready to welcome millions of Democrats, independents, and anyone who believes in the greatness of America and the righteous heart of the American people.
Welcome back to America Decides. Sound bites from Republican conventions past. First one, 2016 in Cleveland, former President Trump, then the nominee. And also in 2020, a much quieter convention because it wasn't in person largely because of COVID. Talking about unity. So, what can we expect to hear from former President tonight? Well, Danielle Alvarez, I hope she has an answer to that. She's a senior advisor for the Trump campaign. And Danielle, if you don't have an answer, I don't know who would.
Well, President Trump certainly would, because he, as he said himself, tore up his speech after the failed assassination attempt.
Why?
He really wanted to meet the moment. It was a different speech. This speech will have similarities in the sense that he will still talk about record. This election is about these two men's record. But this speech he wrote personally. He poured into. He was making final edits up until, just the walkthroughs and the rehearsals today. And it will be very personal. It will be from the heart. And it will meet the moment. It will call for the unity that the nation needs.
And when you say the moment, what is the moment? What is the moment after the tragic events, near tragic for former President Trump, tragic indeed for the Corey Carpatore family and the two other wounded victims? What is the moment?
You know, the president, I was so impressed when everything was happening in Butler, and he had the wherewithal to think outside of himself, to be the leader that who works for him, knows him to be, that America knows him to be when he was in the White House for 4 years. And he stopped and he told the crowd, I'm okay, and let's fight. That's the moment. It's the energy that we feel right here in this arena every night that the president has walked out through those halls and into this auditorium. That's the moment. It's the need that the American people have for true leadership. When Democrats are in disarray, when they have no idea who will be at the top of their ticket, when they have an absolute failed record, President Trump has a winning record, a record of success, and a plan to turn this country around. And he's the leader that we need in this moment. That is the moment that President Trump will meet tonight and as we head into November.
Did you read the speech drafted before Butler, Pennsylvania?
I've read excerpts of both speeches, and again, what I can tell you is that it's deeply personal. His entire family will be in the Friends and Family box this evening. Former First Lady Melania Trump will be in that Friends and Family box. And this is a very heartfelt speech, a very personal speech that he has put together.
How much will Joe Biden factor into tonight's speech? Because if I hear you, Danielle, it's less personal, maybe less aggressively partisan. Is that a fair read?
It will be about record. We will certainly talk about the issues that matter to Americans, but Biden by name will not be mentioned.
Biden by name will not be mentioned.
Yes,
How
sir.
about Kamala Harris?
I have read excerpts, and I can definitely say that Biden by name will not be mentioned.
Interesting. Do you have a sense, Danielle, within the campaign about what the next week or so is going to be for President Biden and his campaign, and do you care?
This entire campaign has been very unpredictable.
Agreed. Fact check true.
From the early moments, to the weaponization of the justice system, to the New York court cases, it has been absolutely unpredictable to the way that he historically rewrote the platform from a 60-page document to a 15-page document, from the VP announcement. So if I tried to predict what might come next.
Let me simplify it. Does the orientation of the messaging or the approach geographically change in any way if it's Kamala Harris or Joe Biden?
Well, we have to figure out what's happening. I mean, rumor is right now that he may drop out of the race this weekend. The first question that comes to mind is, if he can't run a campaign, how could Joe Biden run a country? If it is Kamala Harris, she owns The open border. She's the original border czar. She owns the lie of the last 3.5 years of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. She owns every failure that is Joe Biden because it is the Biden-Harris ticket. And so we're focused on our race. We're focused on running our own race, on the president's strengths, on his record. He is, as I tell everyone, the best asset that we have because he's not only the leader of this campaign in the Republican Party, but he's the leader that the nation's looking for.
Danielle Alvarez, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. So let's talk a little bit about President Biden's re-election campaign. It is fair to say in a period of kind of distress. And I want to bring in Michigan Democratic Senator Gary Peters. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you. For Democrats who are watching and for Republicans and independents who are watching, in fair numbers, I'll let you know, what would you tell them about what they are seeing and hearing on an almost daily basis about this internal crisis within the party, about the future of President Biden's re-election campaign?
Well, I can tell you the president continues to be focused on running. He's been certainly telling everybody that he is going to be the nominee and that he is going to run a strong race. And so that's certainly where the president's coming from right now.
Where are you coming from, Senator Peters?
Well, certainly I support the president, always have supported the president. I think he's been an absolutely outstanding president. If you just look at legislative accomplishments under the President Biden, you'd have to go way back in history to find a president that's been as effective as he is. But I also, I head up the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, so my focus is on making sure we hold the Senate and expand the Senate. And certainly we know all of these races are going to be incredibly competitive, especially in battleground states like we have here in Michigan. And so I've been talking to the president's campaign and certainly giving them my views and my concerns about having a very, very close race and what we have to do in order to win. And certainly we've got our work cut out for us.
How can you articulate those concerns? Do your concerns include advice for the president to step aside?
Well, I don't want to get into specifics of any kind of advice that I have given, but I've had the opportunity to talk directly to key leaders of the Biden campaign. And I'm a pretty straight shooter. I'm a fact person. I'm going to look at the facts on the ground and look at the data points that are necessary to know how to win. And so I've given a very straightforward and candid assessment to the Biden campaign. And I know that they are considering that.
How was your candid, data-driven analysis received?
They listened.
Happily?
Well, I think they have an interest. They're focused, obviously, on winning, as we all are. We think that's, without question, the number one thing that we have to do is to win. And certainly, I think it was a good, productive conversation.
So we have a new CBS poll out tonight, and I know one poll does not determine an election. No poll determines an election, but there is a trajectory that others within the Democratic Party are seeing in internal polls. Our poll has the national number, 52 former President Trump, 47 President Biden, the largest lead for former President Trump in this entire campaign cycle, a lead he did not have in 2020, he did not have in 2016. Your reaction to that poll?
Well, certainly just one poll. There's a lot of polls. I see polls on a daily basis. I head the campaign committee for the Senate. And so I always take one individual poll with a grain of salt. You have to look at patterns. We've had some extraordinary events that have occurred over the last few days. You're in the middle of a Republican convention right now that tends to always give a bounce to the party that's in that convention. But you have to take the sum of all of that information before you come to any conclusions. My focus is primarily on the Senate, and I can tell you that if you look at the polling of our Senate candidates around the country, they are actually leading their Republican opponents. We've actually seen in recent days their lead has actually grown over that period of time, and this is not just from one poll, but a lot of different polls that have been put together. So they are running strong. I'm very pleased by that. We still got a lot of campaign ahead of us. We still got a Democratic convention. You get after Labor Day, a lot of folks who simply aren't paying attention to politics. They've got a lot of other things in their lives that they've got to be concerned about. But after Labor Day, you start seeing dynamics of a campaign come in clearer focus as some of our undecided folks or folks who are not as engaged start to get engaged. And that's when polls start telling us a whole lot more.
Michigan Democratic Senator Gary Peters. Sir, thank you very much for your time. Coming up, my conversation with the Biden campaign's senior advisor, spokesperson, as pressure builds, as we've talked about all evening, on President Biden to re-examine his political future. That's next. You are streaming America Decides.
We will get it back. I had this incredible privilege to serve as your top diplomat. I saw how the world always looks to our nation as the unrivaled example of what a free society should look like. But unfortunately, President Biden struts the global stage. Maybe I should say he shuffles the global stage. He talks a big game about American values. But what's he done at home? What's he shown the world? What have he and his leftist base actually shown other nations?
Earlier, I spoke with the Biden campaign's senior spokesperson about the president's campaign and its persistent troubles. I know this has been a difficult week. It may be a difficult weekend ahead. And I know the campaign has said this over and over again. But say it one more time. Is the president dropping out of this race?
President Biden is our Democratic nominee. President Biden is going to win this November. And after watching some of the nights of the Republican National Convention this week, he is more motivated than ever. We had the architect of family separation on the convention stage last night. We had J.D. Vance talking about how he cares about working people while he shills for Peter Thiel on the convention stage last night. We are motivated, we are excited, and we are going to put in the work to win because we cannot afford Donald Trump ever to set foot in the Oval Office ever again.
I don't know, Kevin, if you saw the newest CBS polling numbers that show nationally President Trump 52, President Biden 47. As our Anthony Salvanto just told our audience, the largest lead former President Trump has had in this campaign. Your reaction?
Well, look, we look at a lot of polls. We do a lot of internal polling. We look at a lot of external polling. But we also look at the conversations that we're having with voters at events, at the doors, when we're knocking doors. We look at what our grassroots supporters, which is at historic levels for the campaign, are thinking about and what they are motivated by. And what we continue to see is the more we talk about Project 2025, the more we talk about how dangerous the Donald Trump agenda is for working people and for their rights, the better position we are to win. And that is why it is so important that everybody that rejects Trump's dangerous ideology comes to the table, figures it out, and understands that Joe Biden is our nominee.
Kevin, I want you to assess for our audience, because they read the web, they see all these stories. The majority leader, Chuck Schumer, puts out a very soft, not even non-denial that he told the president it's time to end the campaign. That Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader of the Democrats in the House, does more or less the same thing, another tepid non-denial. It feels as if the leadership within Congress on the Democratic side of the aisle is either telling or strongly suggesting the president to not only reevaluate, but reevaluate to a place that gets him to leave. How should people process all that?
I think you got to talk to your friends and families about the issues that they care most about when it comes to this election. What we continue to see every day at the Republican National Convention is a massive threat to the basic rights of every American in this country. We have no vision for the future, no opportunity to create jobs like the way Joe Biden has. And I think we have to continue to listen to the questions that the American people care about at the end of the night when they get home from work. Look, Joe Biden, he was in Vegas this week, obviously got cut a little bit short, but what he talked about was a vision for the future. Because what we continue to hear from our voters is that they want to hear about how we can continue the progress to lower costs, to create jobs, to protect our rights, because those are the fundamentals that matter to voters that have the most at stake this election.
Should Democrats take any cues from former President Obama, who was reported by the Washington Post this morning to have said, reevaluate and seriously reconsider?
I think it's really important that the American people continue to think about the choice in this election. Every single day, Donald Trump is showing us who he is. He wants to attack us. He wants to divide us. He has no vision for creating better economy for this country. He is not here for you. And that's what we have to do as a campaign. Cement the choice between a guy that is fighting for you, creating jobs in this country, and Donald Trump, who has no interest, no plan in doing anything that matters to the American people.
Kevin, because this is a persistent conversation among Democrats at this point, where they're at least theoretically imagining an alternative to the president, whether that is true or not, or they should, let's show you some also brand new CBS poll numbers on the matchup. Hypothetical, let me put that in all capital letters, hypothetical between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump. The numbers, as people can see on the screen, 51% Donald Trump, 48% Kamala Harris, slightly better than the gap over President Biden. What does that mean to you, if anything?
Again, I think the most important thing that this campaign can and will do every single day in this campaign is remain focused on the reality on the ground. We don't live in hypotheticals. We don't live in blind sources on the Hill. We live in the fact that there are so many Americans that do not have the luxury of creating this hypothetical in their head. They need to figure out if they are going to vote for Joe Biden or not based on if they care about their rights, if they care about who's going to fight for their health care, and they're going to really need to think about this when it comes to the ballot box. And I think we have a really good story to tell there, Major.
Kevin, preview or pre-butt former President Trump's speech tonight?
I don't think we're going to hear any much of a vision from Donald Trump. What we're going to hear is some lies. We're going to hear him continue to traffic in some conspiracy theories. And we're going to hear, and this is most importantly, Major, no plan for the American people. We heard a little bit of this from J.D. Vance last night. He talks about he cares about the auto worker in Michigan. Well, why is he so interested in doing nothing to pass the PRO Act in Congress? Why is he so interested in repealing the Inflation Reduction Act, which was creating manufacturing jobs in Washington? I think what you're going to hear is more division, more hatred, and no plan for the working people of this country that deserve a president focused on them.
With the Biden-Harris campaign, Kevin Munoz, thank you so very much for your time. My colleague Robert Costa spoke with another top Trump advisor, Chris LaCivita, and he's a really important voice about tonight's big address from the former president.
Is he going to address the shooting in his speech?
I mean, look, I don't think that you can go through something like that and not. But that, again, is not the focus of the speech. The focus of the speech are the forgotten men and women of the working middle class and what Donald Trump had, what he had done as a president, what he's going to do when he gets elected again in November.
Is he going to speak to skeptics out there who might not be fully convinced about?
Well, I mean, look, there's a group of the electorate that clearly we want to target and we want to focus, and they're concerned about the issues of being able to afford putting food on the table and gas in the cars. So these are issues, and obviously where America stands on the world stage. So public safety, all of these, the border crisis, which is growing worse and worse every single day.
CBS News has brand new head-to-head polling for the 2024 presidential race. So let's check in with our pollster, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, take it away.
Hey there, Major. So it's simply this. Donald Trump will accept the Republican nomination tonight with his largest lead of the campaign over Joe Biden so far. This polling was done entirely after the tragic events of Saturday. So this is your latest. It is 52-47. Now, I want to put that in context in a couple of ways, Major. First, that is a shift, slight shift, but a shift nonetheless, from our numbers nationally in early July, number one. Number two, that 5 points, what does it mean in historical context, Major, since you were just talking about history? You have to go back 20 years to find the last time that a Republican nominee for president won the popular vote, and 30 years to find a Republican presidential candidate who won the national popular vote by as much more than 5 points. So that implies an electoral college advantage for sure, and that is important historically. And finally, let me just point out, Donald Trump maintains his lead in those battleground states, in those states that, at least going into this, we thought would be the closest. That's where we stand, Major.
And Anthony, I just want to drill down on something you said, but I want our audience to get a little bit more perspective on it. At no time in 2016 or 2020 was Donald Trump positioned as he is today, correct?
No, he was not. In 2020, Donald Trump trailed in poll after poll. Of course, he went on to lose the election, but Joe Biden led in state after state, Major. So that context is important, too. And I want to show you this because, like I said, this is post-assassination attempt. The impact of it is not large, right? You see 2/3 of people say it hasn't changed who they're considering voting for. However, for those who do say it's had some effect, it is net positive, more likely to consider Trump, again, for those who say it's had an effect. But let me also show you this, because I think it's important. We asked for each, for Joe Biden, for Donald Trump, has what they've said in the aftermath of Saturday's tragic events encouraged more unity in your view or more division? And a slight majority, but a majority, feel that Donald Trump has encouraged more unity. They say the same thing about President Biden, but they're registering some of that unity. You've seen that in the convention over the last couple of days. Voters are being receptive to that, Major.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you so very much. I spoke with Georgia Republican Governor Brian Kemp for my podcast, The Takeout, about the presidential race, and here is some of that conversation. Talk to me about the sense I get here from Republicans that everything is rolling Trump's way and this election is effectively over and Republicans are going to sweep the House, sweep the Senate, and reelect Trump.
Yeah, I am not in that camp. I'm in the camp of we need to win today. We got to get up and win tomorrow, get up and win the next day. We got to do that all the way to November. I mean, things.
Don't kid yourself about this momentum.
We cannot take anything for granted. We saw that in the 2022 election when everybody thought we were going to have, big majorities in the Senate, get control back of the Senate, have big majorities in the House, and we ended up, thankfully, won the House, but razor-thin majorities. We don't have control of the Senate. And so if anything should teach us something is we do not need to get overconfident here. The Democrats are in disarray. Joe Biden has a lot of problems, and we as Republicans, and I think former President Trump's done a good job of just, letting that fester, not trying to change the dynamic, being very disciplined.
What do you think J.D. Vance brings to the ticket?
I feel like all the people that were rumored to be on the short list and reported about or submitted paperwork, I think would have all been really good picks. And I felt like no matter who he picked, I felt like the Republican base and Republicans in general around the country would rally to that pick. Because at the end of the day, they're going to be voting for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. And I think, all those folks, including J.D. Vance, check the box of something were to happen, he could step into the role of being our commander-in-chief.
That does it for me tonight. Please stay with us after the break for a CBS News special report covering the very final day of the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. You are streaming America Decides.